Hello creatives, my name is Tyler Zachary Karenko, fashion designer, entrepreneur. Welcome to the House of TZC, where we're building better fashion businesses together. This video is about the exciting yet infuriating process of working with SHEIN to produce the collection I designed for them. This is the second video in a 4-part series on my channel where I talk about that collaboration, the collection itself, the process of working with them, sales and profits, and then my overall thoughts on the company, fast fashion, and the experience. So let's get into it. I found the opportunity for the SheinX program on Creatively. Creatively is an online job platform that allows you to create an online portfolio of all the work or creative work that you do. You're also able to go and look through job listings for freelance opportunities, internships, jobs, etc., and just creates a community of like-minded creative individuals looking for creative work and collaboration. When I came across the freelance opportunity for the SheinX program, you have to send in a really specific cover letter to a recruiter, which they ask you for basic information. Experience, schooling, experience working with Illustrator, and then also what kind of collection you would like to design for them. For me, the answer to that question was really simple. I wanted to show my collection on men and women, as I often play with traditional masculinity and traditional femininity in my designs, and I like to create unisex collections. And within a week or maybe 2 weeks, I actually got a response back. They wanted me to send in more examples of my work, send them my portfolio, but a condensed portfolio, something that shows off my ability to do the stuff that they were going to ask me to do. This is the SheinX Portfolio that I sent them, one that catered exactly to what they were looking for. I started in this portfolio talking about the cart collection. It shows inspiration, research, design development, and also my ability to do Illustrator flats, probably the most important reason why I included this collection. Then I included the cloud collection. This was probably the most important collection that I actually included in the portfolio. The only reason I did is because I wanted to show my ability to do a men's and women's wear collection, combine them into one, do a unisex collection, and it was actually the collection I thought I was going to submit to SHEIN to have them produce. Unfortunately, if you watched the last video, you know they only allow you to design for one category, and you can either do men or women. They do not allow you to do both. Then I included the Lily of the Field collection, which honestly could have been left out, but it does show my ability to do a specific women's wear collection. I've already shown one men's wear, so now I'm showing women's wear. And also this collection I used just to kind of show off a name, Derek Lam 10 Crosby, a collection that I designed in the interview process for that specific company. And then I end all of my portfolios with the MME 898 collection, which is about Madame Curie. It was my senior thesis in college and is the collection I use because I like to show my ability to go from initial designs all the way to a final product, and having those final pictures of garments that you've actually produced and made is really nice to have in a portfolio. The only thing I didn't show in this collection that I probably should have was my ability to fill out a tech pack. A tech pack is a combination of different elements of a specific design. This is an example here of a tech pack that I've done before. It shows the illustrations, it shows the bill of materials, it shows all of the different elements that go into making one specific garment. Later in this video, we're actually going to be discussing how SHEIN required me to submit tech packs to them for their specific standard. But if you want to see how a designer actually creates a tech pack for something that is going into their looks, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, because we are going to be doing that very shortly on my channel as I send off some of the looks that I'm designing for my main collection, Tell It to the Bees, to some of my pattern cutters, drapers, and sample makers. They appreciated what I sent them in the portfolio regardless, and I got the job. As soon as that happened, they sent over the contract. There are a couple key elements in the contract that I want to point out to you all. Any design or artwork that you produce as a part of this collection is signed over to SHEIN forever. So I guess,
welcome to SHEIN Afterlife.
you are never able to produce and or sell these garments or artwork at any point in the future. In this contract, you're also signing away your logo and your brand name as part of any marketing materials that they choose to promote the SheinX program and in any capacity. You can also not speak disparagingly or in any way that may seem to be defamatory in any way or on any platform from now until forever. And a designer cannot divulge any information that may be considered secret as a part of the production process. We will be tiptoeing the line here, people, but just know you're lucky and you got to see it first before it gets taken down. In the last video posted here, we already talked about the collection and the design process of making it, but real quick, it was research, design, submit the collection, and here was the collection I submitted. Then they did ask me to revise a couple of the designs to fit more into what they were looking for. After all the the designs were submitted and approved, they ask you to make a tech pack. And we did not talk about a tech pack in the last video, so I do want to show you a little example here on screen of what those tech packs actually looked like. Here is an example of one of my random looks. Let's do the brown boxy top. In a SHEIN tech pack, they require you to name the product. This is a short description of what the product actually is, which it's a boxy top with cold shoulder lantern sleeves. This is going to be the actual title of the product when showing on their website. You also have to come up with a product category. Very simple. This is obviously women's blouses or women's tops. And then you do a spec drawing, and SHEIN does require you to do a front view, a side view, and a back view in color, and you must use Adobe Illustrator. You cannot use any hand-drawn flats or hand-drawn illustrations. This is very important. This is a key element and one of the things that they require in order to get the job. When creating an Illustrator flat, the most important thing is to get the color correct, is to get the drape correct, is to get all the closures and design details. You want the design in the flat to be as close to the actual design as possible. Then you have to do your Pantone colors, another industry standard thing. I found mine online at pantone.com. Then you have to list the collection inspiration. We've already talked about this. The collection inspiration was a crossroads between sexy, chic, and athleisure, and then a product description. And this is where you take that title and you fully flesh out every single detail that's going to be in the design. For example, this one is a high hip length boxy top with a contrast mesh cold shoulder detail, mock neck, and symmetrical scoop lantern full length sleeves. That is pretty much every single detail in this entire garment meshed into one. And then you describe all the details from color, style, print, which this garment did not have any, to the neckline, closures, sleeve type and length, hem length, cuffs, fabric types, and care instructions for the garment. Then you have to find reference photos. And this is going to be an important one in all tech packs. Reference photos allow the cutter draper to see an element being actually worked into a design that already exists, and then try to replicate it and then modify it in some way. The thing with SHEIN that makes it a little different is that you could only use SHEIN references, and more specifically, you could only use references that have SHEIN in the title of the garment description. You had to reference their SKU number, the product detail that you actually are calling out. Then you need to do fabrics and trims and notions, examples with references to the actual SHEIN products and closures. The other option you had with this is that you could look through the SHEIN fabric library. That was very difficult to navigate. All the fabrics kind of melded into one, and some pictures they
I don't know if I'm allowed to share this.
This is part of their secret information, I would assume, because it is specifically part of their libraries. And then you ended the tech pack with measurements. Every garment is totally different, but when filling out a tech pack for them, they give you different measurements that you may need depending on the type of garment that it is. After the tech pack is submitted and approved through your project coordinator, they are sent to the team overseas of sample makers, pattern makers, cutters, and drapers. Then they begin working on them, and then they send them back piece by piece or garment by garment, where you do a fitting on a model or on a mannequin. A fitting in fashion is just an opportunity for a sample maker and their team to meet with a designer and a model and show the garment at its current step in the process. The whole goal here is to get the sample as close to the final garment as you possibly can, so that the designer can approve it to go on to bulk production. This is where things start to get a little dicey, but I'm going to give you some major elements that went into each of the fitting processes for each of the looks. We're also going to split these into 3 categories based on how I felt about the process of working with them. I'll show you the sample that they sent me, and then the fit notes that I had for them. We're gonna call this first section hopeful but nervous. Let's start with the orange dress. I had no notes on this one. This dress actually came out pretty close to the final design, and I immediately sent it to bulk production. We're off to a good start, just saying. Let's now move on to the white sweatpants. When I got the white sweatpants sent back to me, I did notice that they skipped out on the piping that I wanted to run down the center front of the leg. I re-referenced the design and showed a new SKU number that had exactly what I was looking for. They responded to me by saying that this trim detail only works when you have the same fabric next to each other, or the same color of fabric. Because I was doing 2 different fabrics, that they eliminated that as a part of the process. My assumption is they are trying to replicate a design detail without actually doing it. What they were probably going to do is pinch out 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch and create a seam line, so that then it looks like a faux piping, opposed to actually adding a whole new trim to the garment and causing the garment to be more expensive. They eliminated that detail. I was okay, I understood that, so I just moved it on to bulk production. Now we can go on to the black dress. In the black dress here, there was a couple issues that I had, starting with the length of the garment. It was a little bit too short for what I was looking for. I also noticed that one of the mesh inserts was a little bit the wrong shape. I wanted it to be a little bit wider as it went up the hip. As you can see in these reference photos, I did adjust that a little bit by drawing on the image and asking them to open it up and to also lower the length to where I wanted the garment to actually fall when somebody was wearing it. They approved those modifications and decided to send it to bulk without a second sample. Here is the brown boxy top from earlier, where the major note in this was that the color was incorrect. I wanted something closer to a brown, and they sent me something that was a little bit closer to a tan or a white, like a light tan. The reasoning for the incorrect color was because they had bad lighting and that the color was closer to what I was looking for. As we know now, when we actually receive the garments in person, the color is very light. It should have been way darker than what it ended up being. I also noticed that they eliminated the back zipper detail and instead made it a keyhole with a button. This was another fast fashion element. Because of the quality of the materials used in the mesh, it was not going to sustain a zipper, so instead they switched it to a button. But it still looked okay, and the actual garment itself turned out pretty much exactly how I wanted it to look. So it was approved for bulk production. Then we got to the red top. This is the first one we're gonna notice that we did a second mock-up in the process. As soon as I got that first sample, I realized my mistake with my design and assessing for the quality of the fabrics and textiles used. The shoulder detail that I wanted was supposed to be more of a roll, and unfortunately, because of the quality and thickness of this material, ended up being more like a flap or like a second sleeve over the long sleeve. This was never even mentioned in my fit notes to them because I already knew from the previous garments that were being submitted to me that unfortunately, because of the quality of the material, I had to make some sacrifices in what the design actually came out to be. However, I did notice that the collar that they put on the garment was way too tall and was causing a lot of bunching around the neck. Also, that the length of the garment was uneven. And this one was very strange for me because if you look at the side view, you can see that it's a lot longer in the front than it is in the back. And I wasn't sure if that was because of the cutting was uneven or if the fact that the hem width was too small to actually fit around her body. Typically, hems all fall parallel to the ground, and this was not parallel. Their reasoning for why the hemline was uneven was just because the model didn't pull the shirt on all the way. This is where I started to get a little nervous because why isn't the garment being put on all the way? A fitting process, like I said, is all about checking to make sure that the final garment looks exactly the way it's supposed to look. A model should be wearing the garment correctly so that we can make sure that every part of the garment is fitting the way it's supposed to. Because of the issues that I had with this garment, they did decide to send it on to trial number 2, where they sent me back a sample. They did fix the collar and they shortened it a little bit. It created less bunching around the neck. However, I did also notice that even despite me asking them to make the garment a little bit longer, because I did want it to be a crotch level, that I think they just put it on a mannequin and stretched it down and made it fit to the length that they wanted. Even though they said they adjusted the length, it really looks like the same length that it was before. But beyond that, it was approved to bulk. And then the final garment in this section was the white dress. I recognized that the low hip measurement probably was a little bit too tight, which was why it was pulling and creating drag lines across the front of the body around the hips. Also that the slit for me was just a little bit too low. I wanted that to be a little bit higher up on the thigh, and that the length was too short. I wanted it to be a little bit longer so that it fell to an ankle level. They recognized all of those revisions and they decided to go on to bulk production without creating a second sample. The designs that we have now talked about all pretty much fit into normal fitting procedure when dealing with fitting and working with a manufacturer overseas. But we're gonna call this next section, what the heck is this? This section of garments is exactly what makes you look for a new manufacturer when trying to create your designs. In fact, I got so frustrated where I almost pulled my entire collection from them and decided to stop working with them. Let's get right into it with the orange asymmetrical top. The first thing I'm gonna point out to you is that right off the bat, I said that the garment was not steamed or ironed. Bad fitting etiquette. The problem is that when a garment is not ironed or steamed, you're missing out on how the garment is going to actually fall on the body. When you don't do that, you're creating jagged lines and edges. It's going to sit differently than how it should be. Beyond that, I also noticed that there was a shoulder cap ease issue. There was some drag lines that were running across the top of the shoulder that shouldn't have been there, and that meant that the shoulder cap was too tight on the upper arm. I also made some comments about the sleeve length and the sleeve shape. I wanted something closer to what they had already designed in the brown boxy top, and not whatever shape this is. I noticed that the bust measurement was a little bit too tight, again creating drag lines across the front of the bust, and that the front neckline shape was the incorrect shape, and I wanted them to get closer to the white dress, which I referenced, and then the color, which again was just chalked up to it being bad lighting, and it was closer to the color that I actually wanted. The most frustrating part of it, in the back view of this garment, you can see that the hem is uneven, falling lower on one side than it does the other. I don't know if this issue was due to it not being steamed or ironed, but when I called this out, they told me that the hem is straight in pattern form and that the model is standing crooked or twisted, and that is causing the garment to look incorrect. You tell me, does she look like she's standing crooked or twisted? I don't think so. Despite the errors that I called out in this garment, they decided to move the garment on to bulk production, with only making adjustments to the sleeve. Moving on, let's talk about the white skirt. Do I need to mention the fact that it's not ironed here? It's okay, we're just gonna skip that for now. I mean, I'm still gonna mention it in the comments to them because they should know that they should be ironing and steaming the garments. I did talk about the waistband being a little bit too thick. I gave them adjustments for the draping and the tie detail. I didn't want it to be as scooped out, I wanted it to be more of a straight line, and I also wanted to raise the height at which the spaghetti straps for the tie actually fell on the garment, and I showed them that in the reference photo here. I also wanted them to fix the hem finishings because they had like an inch hem line, and instead I wanted to do like a cute roll hem, which would be better for this type of material. Also, that the hem was uneven. I did want it to fall at a parallel level to the ground, even with the drape across the body. With all of these adjustments to the garment, they did make a second sample. The second sample was produced a little bit later and should fall into the final category, which we will get to later. I just decided to send it on to bulk production with no notes. Here is the orange pleated skirt. Color blocking was a part of the design process and designing of this collection. Unfortunately, a lot of the color blocking got X'd out when it came to the actual samples here, because as you can see here in this first sample, the color blocking that was happening between the yoke and the actual accordion pleats was not good. I didn't think it was pleasing to the eye. I decided to nix the color blocking and make it all the same color as the accordion pleats. I also wanted them to add a little bit of fullness to the skirt because I felt like it was falling a little bit too straight and I wanted it to be a little bit more full, and then also that the asymmetrical swoop across the body was the correct shape, but that it was just a little bit too long for what I was hoping for. I wanted the yoke to be a little bit shorter on the hips, which I showed here in the reference photo and redrew out where I wanted it to be. One final little note here, because the garment was not shown on a body and was shown on a mannequin, I am not entirely sure if the garment is the correct length. Because of that, I did want to send them a photo of where the length should fall on a reference photo that I already gave them in the tech pack, just to make sure that the length was the correct length for what I was looking for. Then, without a second sample, it was moved on to bulk production. Then we'll move on to the white pants, and I will just say this is where I began to have a full meltdown. This is one of the designs that they asked me to adjust in the first initial 15 looks that I submitted to them. I will admit that it's probably not my best design, but paired with the low quality fabrics, it just made these pants look like cheap jester clown pants. I did notice that in the first sample here that they removed the second button as a part of the waistband and they kept it as just a single button waistband, which was a part of the design element. I don't know why they eliminated that. They also did the incorrect type of pleat. It was supposed to be 2 knife pleats. A knife pleat is a pleat that's folded over on itself. A box pleat, which they did, which are both sides coming back over and falling on top of the inside of the pleat. More than just using the incorrect type of pleat, where they left the pleat open to was absolutely incorrect. I do not know why they closed the pleat all the way to past the knee. That looks nothing like what the illustration looks like. I'm not sure why they did that. I also told them in the sample that the color blocking had to go. Because of the quality of the fabric, that tan color, which was appearing more yellow than it was tan, was being seen through the low quality white fabric. So I decided to nix the color blocking in these pants altogether, and they decided to make a second sample, thankfully. I will say right off the bat that it did look better all white, but the pleat alteration was completely ignored. In fact, the knife pleats were never even attempted. I don't know why that wasn't adjusted, but they did open up the pleat a little bit more. Also, I made a big comment here on the ankle tie, which the loops required it to be tied at center front of the leg. To me, that is extremely awkward. I don't know why they didn't move those so that it could be tied on the outer side of the leg to make it more pleasing to the eye. Tying a big knot in center front looks very awkward, and it changes the proportion of how your leg is going to look. They told me no alterations would be made and these pants were moving on to bulk production. And I was extremely upset by this because these pants were not the vision. These do not represent me as a brand or as a designer. I did not want these to be produced. This is where I was almost ready just to give up entirely. But then we got the matching set, the white Jester jacket. I do not have the initial sample photos that they sent me. They were taken off of the SheinX portal. This is the only awful picture that I have, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to show you this picture. Sorry about the poor quality. I'm literally having to blow it up super huge because it was a message sent in our WhatsApp messaging. First, they sent this sample to me after they had already sent the white pants. So they had previously, before even asking me, removed the color blocking that was supposed to be in the inside of the sleeves. I'm okay with the fact that they did that. I would have told them to change it anyway. I also noticed in these samples, which is very, very hard to tell, but the shoulder length was too short. I wanted the garment to fall off of the shoulder a little bit and to be kind of oversized on the shoulder, to have a longer shoulder measurement. This garment was falling on the inside of the shoulder line. And then next, which I don't even understand how they got here, but the sleeves were incredibly wrong. They were so incredibly wrong. I don't have any other way to express it. The entire bottom portion of the sleeve was completely different than what I gave them in the design. Instead of just doing the 2 knife pleats that they had in the front, they decided to do continuous box pleats all the way around the back and front of the sleeve, which is shown nowhere on the design. In fear of getting in trouble with showing you the messages, I will just tell you what was said. The manufacturer told me that my design showed box pleats, and that if I wanted to use knife pleats, that I should have illustrated that correctly. The attitude. But to be honest, I probably had an attitude at this point too, because look what they gave me. This is ridiculous. I know you can barely see it, but it was wrong. And you tell me, do these look like knife pleats to you? And I will show an illustrated CAD version of knife pleats and an illustrated CAD version of box pleats again so you can see it. I got a little attitude back. I decided to send them an exact pattern of what I wanted the bottom of the sleeves to look like. So in their second sample, they decided to ignore the pattern that I sent to them and told me in our messages that they were just going to do gathers instead, which I will give them looked a lot better than however the box pleats would have looked on that sleeve. When I got that second garment, I immediately called my mother and I was like,
Mom, I think I'm gonna quit. This is absolutely terrible. I don't want to be a part of this process. These looks don't represent my design aesthetic. They don't represent what I want to do as a designer. I'm not liking how these garments are turning out.
She told me that if I really feel that way, that I should do it. I contemplated it, and then I realized that 11 garments now had already been approved for bulk production. I was just going to lose out on the money. I'd already done the work. I had already figured everything out. I might as well just finish off and send it into bulk and not even care. I decided to keep the energy that I already had rolling from coming off of that garment, and I just decided that from then on, it wasn't gonna matter what the look came back as. I was just going to approve everything that they sent to me. And over the next 4 garments, I made one single note, which was very opposite of everything else that you guys have seen so far. That's why I'm gonna call this section the whatever phase. I also do want to point out though that within these 4 samples, they all came back pretty okay. Even if I hadn't given up, these probably all would have been approved immediately anyway. But besides the point, because it's about how I felt, okay? First, I got back the black button up. No notes at all. This actually came back pretty close to what I was looking for, and I immediately sent it on to bulk production. Then I got the black pants with the mesh leg inserts. This is the one time when I did actually make a note. I asked them to switch the silver button that they had at the waistband with a black button. They ignored that and they sent it on to bulk production. Then I got the jumpsuit, and this jumpsuit turned out well. Unfortunately, the collar was incorrect. I don't know why they made the choice to make it white instead of the same cream color as the pants, but that was their choice. The one thing that I would have probably made a note by looking back on it was that I probably would have shortened the garment just by an inch because it is a little bit long on the model, but again, like I said, I did not care. Whatever, go ahead and move it on. And then finally the printed jacket, which they messaged me before they even sent out the sample telling me that the fabric choice that I wanted, which was more closer to like a wool polyester blend, they did not have any more of that fabric, and they switched it to a cotton poly blend. Again, I was okay with this choice. They could do whatever they kind of wanted to. I immediately moved it onto bulk with no comments. Finally, they are done. Even though it got to a hot mess there in the middle, the anxiety of having to deal with all the fitting process and figuring out what these designs are actually gonna look like is over, and now I can move on to the rest of everything else in this project. While the garments were being made, they asked us to send them photos of ourselves. We had to do 3 artist photos and then do an artist statement. An artist statement is just an opportunity to provide your audience with a written statement that allows them better access and understanding to the artist themselves, the designer, or the work that they're presenting. My artist statement said, TZC is an emerging fashion brand that creates luxury streetwear and custom made-to-order clothing and accessories. The brand finds inspiration in all things beautiful, the fascinating characters of dramatic films and theatrical productions, the contrasting cultures around the world, the social movements in our society, and the creatives, modern and ancient, that innovate and shape the world around them. TZC uses fashion as an opportunity to inspire imagination, creativity, and individuality for men, women, and everyone in between. A few months went by, and then they decided to send us one high-resolution photo of each of the garments that they produced. And they gave us the right to promote our collection on social media. I did not do this. If you want to find out the real reason as to why I did not do this, you have to go to my channel, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you will be updated when I tell you in that final video in this series. But they did also send it to their SHEIN influencers. So I had 3 different SHEIN influencers model my work and post it on Instagram. The first one, styled by Christina, she posted a picture of her in the white skirt. This profile to me seems like a fake account, or at least an account with a lot of fake followers or bot followers. She has almost 40,000 followers and averages about 10 to 14 likes per photo. I know Instagram is what it is now, and it's difficult to get your content seen or out there or even interacted with, but it does to me seem like you should have more people interacting with your content when you have that many followers. Just saying, this definitely seemed to fit right into the practices that SHEIN was already showing me. Having a SHEIN influencer that has fake followers seemed very on brand. Is that defamatory?
Uh-oh.
The second influencer posted a carousel of pictures of them in the jumpsuit. This account is called Rumming Through the Six. This post got a lot of interaction. She has almost 27,000 followers. She got a lot of different comments and likes on the post. Then I had the third SHEIN influencer post 2 different reels and 1 picture of my printed jacket. This was Jamie Luna Models, and she has almost 70,000 followers. These posts probably gained the most traction, with almost 1,000 likes and comments between the 3 different posts. Finally, I'm gonna get to one last person. Honestly, this meant so much to me, but I had a friend, Miss Laura Saint. She bought the black dress, and she decided to post a reel of that on her personal Instagram page, and she looks wonderful in it, and I absolutely appreciate her doing so. Very thankful to her, and a huge shout out to her. If you want to go and follow her, you absolutely should. I want to say real quick that I am thankful to every single person out there who purchased an item from this collection and supported me as a designer, even if they didn't know they were doing so. It was really, really amazing to finally have a collection out there that I produced under my brand name. I am just really thankful that people are out there supporting independent fashion designers, including this company like SHEIN. The fact that they're doing this program, to have the platform that they do and such a wide reach, it's really cool to know that I have people wearing my collection literally all over the world. Even though I wasn't happy with the collection or happy with this fitting process, which I think tainted how I felt about the collection at the time, I know people out there are going to love it. I promise to have better designs on the horizon, and of course, I can't wait to show you all what I can actually do as a designer. Now, the next section of this process would be sales and profits, but as you know, that is going to be the meat of the next video, so we are not going to talk about sales and profits today. But you can be ready for exploring the actual payment process, how each look performed, including which looks had a lot of returns and which ones didn't, and then also, of course, how much money I made throughout this project. That is all going to be in the next video. So there is the process in a nutshell. As you can see, I have harbored some serious feelings about the collection and working with them, but we made it through. As I said previously, the next video in this series, which will happen in a few weeks, is going to be about sales and profits. But in the next video, we are jumping back into our main topic on this channel, which is talking about designing, building, producing, and selling our first solo collection, Tell It to the Bees. Tell It to the Bees is inspired by love, lost devotion, and the secrets we whisper to the bees. In that video, we will be talking about fabric manipulations, draping, sketching, and illustrating some of those final looks that are going into the collection. But until then, sweet dreams, creatives.